financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's November 28th, 2017. Month is almost over, but this is a momentous day that you should be aware of. Bitcoin has broken the 10K barrier. Yes, it's now trading at over $10,000 per coin. Well, a lot of people have been into it for a long time. One person I know who's been into it and advised his viewers to get into it ages ago is Jason Hamlin. You know him well from goldstockbull.com. Jason, it's been a while, but welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Kerry.
Hey, so you bought Bitcoin a while ago, forgot about it. You were telling your subscribers get in at 100, so they've had a 100-fold return.
Yeah, not too bad. I came across it on a whim, really, and it seemed like an interesting concept to me. So I picked some up at ridiculously low levels, and always thought we'd get to these kind of price levels, but never thought it would happen this fast. Looking at the charts here, we passed 10,000 this morning, so it's been on an absolute tear, and it's been an exciting sector to be invested in, particularly as precious metals have sort of languished over the past several years.
Well, does it alarm you how rapidly it's gone up? That chart, I mean, this is probably the greatest parabolic chart exponential increase in market history. It makes tulip bulbs look like conservative investments.
Right. And everybody's quick to compare it to tulip mania and call it a bubble. It is concerning somewhat the pace at which it's rocketed higher, but it's a global phenomenon. And if it becomes new money, then this kind of valuation is certainly warranted. There's 21 million Bitcoin max supply that will ever be in existence, of which 17 million are already in circulation. And really, it's not even that high because estimates are around 4 million Bitcoin have been destroyed or lost. Private keys have been lost or otherwise unrecoverable. So when you consider that the max supply is actually probably somewhere closer to 17 million, of which there's 13 million circulating or available to be traded, you have an asset with a very limited supply, and we're still in the early stages of this. I think Forbes just put out an article saying that it's like 1994 of the internet or email kind of era. So less than 1% of the population owns any Bitcoin or really understands blockchain technology. Institutional money has yet to really flood into it, and I think we'll see that start happening over the next couple of weeks when futures begin trading and when we get some ETF approval. But despite the rapid rise, when you compare it to the amount of fiat money in circulation, or the value of the stock market or bond market, or even the value of the gold market globally, you could see significant upside from here, even though we've had such a rapid appreciation of the price over the past year.
What do you think governments, how are they going to react to this?
Well, that's been interesting to track because it's, in certain parts of the world, governments have supported it, legalized it, in Japan, Australia, and other places. And obviously, other governments have tried to censor it or make it illegal. And in the U.S., they've kind of taken more or less a hands-off approach, other than the SEC getting involved in some regulation of initial coin offerings. It's been interesting how they haven't had a louder voice in trying to shut it down or make it illegal or stop the growth, because it's certainly an innovation that threatens governments, threatens their power, and threatens central banks. So I find it interesting that we haven't had more of a pushback yet in the United States against it. But we'll see how that unfolds in the months ahead. That's obviously a potential threat. To me, they can never completely shut it down because of the decentralized nature of cryptocurrency. It's sort of similar to how like torrent technology, for downloading music or movies online. The recording industry and the movie industry went out against that hard and spent tons of money, did lots of lobbying, huge lawsuits, even against people, with small amounts of downloads. And all of that really didn't wasn't able to stop it. And I see the same thing happening with cryptocurrency. Even if the U.S. government comes out and tries to outlaw it, I think there'll always be a market for it and ways to trade it. And the bottom line is it's free market money. It's people's currency. Nobody's forcing anyone to use it. And to me, it's time to separate money from the state and from the banking system. And that's exactly what cryptocurrencies are doing.
It's probably been a long time in coming, but you have to think, if the major central banks of the world get together, which I think is a pretty good bet if it really is potentially a threat to government-issued fiat currency. So they get together and they ban it. And, basically possession of 5 or more Bitcoins is presumed possession with intention to distribute Bitcoin. I mean, we have a war on cryptocurrencies, and they have the ability to throw people in jail for it. What's going to happen then?
It's certainly going to make adoption growth slow or decline, but I still think there's going to be a black market for it. I still think people will trade in it and hold it as an investment. I have a hard time believing that there would be coordination between governments or central banks globally to try to do a ban like this. I think there'd be a revolt. I mean, Bitcoin's popular. Coinbase has been adding, I think on average, 30,000 new accounts a day. And following the announcement that futures trading would take place, they were adding over 100,000 new accounts a day. And it's made a lot of people very wealthy. So to come in and completely make it illegal like that, I have a hard time seeing that. I think you would see a lot of revolt. I think it'd be politically very unpopular, and I question whether that kind of coordinated attack could take place. But I suppose anything is possible. If they're smart, I think you join the game, you embrace the technology, you find ways to work with it, and perhaps they all are doing that already, and you buy up some of the cryptocurrency, and they've also accumulated some through, raids of the Silk Road and these kind of black markets. So maybe they get a stake in something that they can't ever completely stop. I think that's probably more likely than coordinating, making it illegal globally.
Well, what if there's only 16, 17 million Bitcoins out there? What if they just buy it all up and put it in a vault? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that much. They can just keep printing the money to buy it, just like they do with precious metals and they're doing with stocks, right?
They could potentially, but so taking it off the market, I guess I've never really considered that. I think people would probably and naturally will be flowing to other cryptocurrencies anyway. Bitcoin has first mover advantage and brand recognition and all of these things, and trust with, the hash power and how long it's been around and hasn't been hacked. Exchanges have been hacked, but the actual cryptocurrency system of Bitcoin hasn't. But there are new coins now that offer advantages, technological advantages over Bitcoin, whether it's privacy or cost or speed of transactions. So, if that happened, I think the price would go absolutely parabolic, even more so than what we're seeing now if they attempted to try to buy it up. But I also think in the Bitcoin investment community, you have a lot of very strong hands, right? They call them hodlers, hold on for dear life. And people aren't looking for a trade. People aren't buying into this just as an investment or a way to make money. There's a lot of philosophical roots for why people are investing in Bitcoin. And I think it'd be very hard to wrestle all of the Bitcoins out of the hands of the strong holders. And I think there's a lot of them, people that invested early and people that just believe in free market money, believe in the blockchain technology, and wouldn't be willing to sell really at any price. And at a certain point, they really don't need to, because if they bought early enough, now they're multimillionaires. And if they do sell, it's a very small fraction of their holdings. So I think the government would have a hard time trying to pull something like that off.
Yeah, well, they've done other things. And look, you can never discount the stupidity of government. We've seen it over and over and over again. They did do a prohibition against alcohol. There's been a prohibition against cannabis for 80, 90 years. That's a lot of government control of things. So I don't think there's an answer for it yet, but it's certainly worth considering. So when do you think it's time to really get back to precious metals, mining stocks, or will it never happen?
So I still hold precious metals and mining stocks physical as a core position, which I don't ever intend to get rid of. I think precious metals and cryptocurrencies are complementary assets. You'll see a lot of people comparing them, gold versus Bitcoin, and trying to, put them up against each other. But I think it makes sense for investors to hold both together. Obviously, one is the physical, tangible asset that's been money for thousands of years and will probably always hold its value, may not appreciate, and certainly hasn't been appreciating at nearly the rate of cryptocurrencies. But you want that in insurance, essentially, in your portfolio. I think cryptocurrencies also act as a hedge against political and geopolitical risk. But I like holding them both together. I still think gold and silver prices are heading higher, but cryptocurrencies have become an increasing percentage of our portfolio allocation over the past couple of years, naturally as the price is appreciated, and we need to sort of go in and rebalance from time to time. But I still believe in precious metals and mining stocks, and we've also been heavy into cannabis stocks. You mentioned the cannabis sector, have done very well with some cannabis growers in Canada that were kind of first into the market, have been doing a lot of outdoor greenhouse growing as opposed to warehouse growing, so their energy costs are lower. And in some cases, you can get double the yield at half the cost versus growing indoor. So there are a couple stocks like Afria or Canopy Growth that have seen phenomenal price appreciation this year. So our portfolio has done very well, not just on the back of cryptocurrencies, but also some gains in mining stocks and certainly from the cannabis sector.
So the cannabis sector looks like it's emerging, especially with marijuana becoming legal this January in California, which is billed as the biggest marijuana market probably in the world. And then you combine it with the 8 or 9 other states that have already legalized, like Alaska, Massachusetts, who else? Oregon, Washington, and of course, Colorado and Nevada.
Right.
So you've got basically, well, I don't know what the rates of cannabis use are in the population at large, but you've got potentially 100 million people in states where it's legal. And gee, if only a few million people start buying, which isn't unreasonable, you could see these things really take off.
Right. And this legalization was long overdue. I think you're seeing mostly positive benefits for the states that have legalized, both in terms of tax revenue for the state, but also in terms of less drinking and driving incidents, less hard drug use. And even in countries that have legalized, I think for the most part, governments have reported positive results from legalizing cannabis, but it's still Schedule I drug, illegal federally in the United States. So that's sort of the next last domino to fall. I think once the federal government legalizes it, or at least takes it off of Schedule I. I mean, it has no business being classified as the same as heroin or cocaine or some of these other drugs, because there's legitimate medicinal benefits. And even from personal experience from members of my family and friends that have used the CBD oil for a variety of ailments, even skin cancer, that you just rub it on every day and within a couple of weeks it goes away, as opposed to having an invasive surgery or obviously chemotherapy and radiation in most cases do more harm than good. So I think we're in the early stages of a massive revolution in the cannabis sector, and I just hope the federal government will finally, take it off of Schedule I and fully legalize it as it should have been all along.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things, the government trying to control people who don't want to be controlled. And look, and there's been studies shown that in states where cannabis is legal or medical marijuana is obtainable, that the opioid abuse level goes down. So, those nefarious companies that make the opioids really they're enemies of cannabis legalization. So I should say there's 6 states where it's legal for recreational use: Maine, Massachusetts, Colorado, Nevada. California will be after the first of the year, Oregon, Washington State, and Alaska. And then, not even discussing the medical, where there's 20 states there. So I predicted this. I have to confess, not that I'm psychic or anything, but I knew after the crash, economic conditions really undermine prohibitions. So it's not to say that machine guns will be available in every gun store, but general prohibitions are extremely unpopular over time because they don't achieve their stated purpose. In fact, they might even achieve the opposite purpose, Jason. And then people start going to jail, lives are ruined, and nothing is accomplished. And then there's a recognition on the part of society that it's spending resources on enforcing something that people don't want. This is exactly what happened with the war on alcohol, otherwise known as prohibition. And one of FDR's major campaign planks was that he would legalize alcohol, which in fact was done with the repeal of the Volstead Act, the 18th Amendment, I want to say, but don't quote me on it. And, maybe that might have been the direct election of senators. I don't remember the numbers. I'm always bad. But the repeal of the Volstead Act basically ended the madness. There is no act here banning cannabis other than, the Narcotics and Dangerous Drug Act and the Marijuana Stamp Tax Act, which one made it unaffordable with this outrageous federal tax. The other allowed I think the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, the predecessor to the DEA, to schedule these drugs as far as penal purposes go, and allowing them to put it as a Schedule 1 narcotic up there with heroin, cocaine, LSD, fentanyl, and everything else is madness here, Jason. So maybe a realization is coming, and the effects, of course, of marijuana are far more benign than the effects of alcohol abuse, which is the most commonly abused drug in the country. Right. I always love the thing, if the FDA, if there was no alcohol use at all, and somebody came to the FDA with ethyl alcohol, with some vodka or scotch to get it approved, it would be turned down in a nanosecond. And yet, it's the most widely abused drug, with nicotine following it up, or maybe nicotine is more, probably, because there's 20% of the population smoking cigarettes, tobacco products. Anyway, so you think this is a growth sector. We're going to see more. What I'm thinking, though, is, like they've got all these brand names for, you go to these dispensaries in Washington State, Colorado, they got 150 things on the menu. And it looks to me like, as far as who can sell it and produce it, is going to really be liberalized with it. Are we going to have a pure competitive market in cannabis in the U.S., Jason? That's what I want to know.
I think we'll get there eventually, yeah. And having all of those options is good because quality has increased. You have more organic product available to you, that they use less chemicals when they're growing. And you have more strains that are, developed specifically for particular medical conditions, or even if you're using it recreationally, whether it's to help you sleep at night or to relax, or something that's, higher energy for when you're working or whatever. Now it's easier to know what you're taking, what the effect will be, what the dosage is. All of these things are benefits to the community from legalization. And I think your larger point about prohibition not working is absolutely spot on. And I think it's why it wouldn't work as well with something popular like cryptocurrency. Unfortunately, Jeff Sessions seems to be very anti-marijuana, so we'll have to see how that all plays out. But I don't think I think this is we're early stages of really the legalization and opening up of this market. And I think that the companies that get in early, that get the licenses, because there's a limited number of licenses to grow, that build the brands, build the retail outlets, build the expertise in how to grow, those companies are going to stand to benefit significantly over the next couple of years. They've already done well so far. But overall, I have to say that I'm encouraged by everything that's happening, whether it's legalization across the states, decentralization with cryptocurrency of money. I think this is a huge thing that has the potential to benefit people all over the globe. We're already seeing in states like Venezuela or other places, Zimbabwe, where you have runaway hyperinflation. Families are literally surviving by moving their money into cryptocurrency, into Bitcoin, which holds or grows its value, while their local fiat currency, government dictate currency, loses its value rapidly. rapidly. So they're able to still afford food and everything they need for their family on a monthly basis. And unfortunately, thousands or millions of other people aren't. By the time they get their paychecks or get their money and go to the store, it's not worth very much. So you have lots of starving and malnutrition, disease that's starting in these countries where inflation is a problem. And it's crazy to think something like cryptocurrency can come in and be a solution and actually save lives in situations like this.
Yeah, it is a great alternative. Agree with you. Hey, just one final thing on prohibitions, and I'll let you go. So the father of modern medicine, Sir William Osler, when they were discussing banning marijuana, he was vehemently opposed to it because he said at the time there was no other treatment for migraine headaches, which mostly afflicted women. Of course, there are men who get migraines, but by and large, the vast majority of sufferers migraine headaches are females. And he was vehemently opposed to it, which of course they paid absolutely no attention to him. And even the treatments available today for migraines are less than ideal. The whole CBD revolution, finding that one alkaloid that appears to have medicinal properties far better than anything else in the hemp plant, really amazing, and really is proof that there is medical applications for the devil's weed. Hey, so one final question, Jason, then I'll let you go. If you're looking at cannabis stocks, what are the things you most want to see? Because just like crypto/kleptocurrencies, there's a lot of marginal players in the business.
Well, the thing that I looked for first and foremost is looking at financials, looking at revenue growth, looking at companies that are cash flow positive, and there are some now. For the longest time, there wasn't, and it was all just hype and investing in the sector because the company was a marijuana company, and that was it. But now we're seeing, very rapidly growing cash flow, profitable companies, and to me, at this point in time, it's the Canadian growers, I think, have a leg up over U.S. companies, obviously because of the federal laws still. So my focus has really primarily been on growers in Canada.
Yeah, growers in Canada. Some of them are setting up operations in California. So you look at these companies, and like I said, just a little bit further, then we'll make plans to talk again. So you want to see that they have cash in the bank, obviously, because there is a burn rate involved with these marijuana startups. Management is a little dicey. How do you judge cannabis management? Yes, it would be great if they have revenues, and if they're not at profitability, at least their burn rate is diminished. But you can't really judge them in a lot of ways by the way you judge traditional stocks, can you?
I think you can. In some cases, managements come from the biopharmaceutical industry, and you can obviously judge their track record over the last 3, 4, 5 years since they've come into existence, how they've built the company, at what cost, burn rate, all of those kind of things. So I think the same way you would take a look at management of any other company applies here. It's obviously an emerging sector, but what have they done prior to this? Did they have success at other companies, growing profits and et cetera? So I do that same kind of analysis anytime we're looking across the board, whether it's mining stocks, cannabis stocks, or even in the cryptocurrency sector. We've created an ICO tracker, which essentially looks at all of these initial coin offerings that are coming up. And one of the key elements that we look at is the team behind it, each company. What is their background? Are they all-stars? Do they have experience working at major companies? Have they had successes in their past that can be quantified? And this gives us some kind of indication of future success. And not always, but we always go back and look at companies we gave high ratings and see how they performed over the years. And the track record has been pretty good, pretty consistent. When you have a strong team, good people, you tend to get good results.
Hey, winners keep winning, normally, with some exceptions. And people who can't win, or so-called losers, are basically going to keep losing. And that's kind of what you want to look at. So I appreciate you coming on, Jason. It's been great catching up with you. Again, your site is goldstockbull.com. That's goldstockbull.com. And hey, take a look at Jason's site. We'll have a link to it in the show notes to this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter. Got one coming out shortly. And Jason, if you got a question for Jason or myself, just email us, kl@kerrylutz.com, and be part of the show. The Twitter feed's at Kerry Lutz. Get a lot of action there recently. And the Facebook page is Financial Survival Network. And Jason, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate your catching up, and let's do it again soon.
Thanks, Gary. Take care.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial